Hello, this is part one of a three-part documentary series talking about the rise and fall of Privateer Press and their games Warmachine and Hordes. Parts 2 and 3 should be playing after this video, but if you want a full unedited experience, there is also the full documentary that's around an hour and a half long, and that gives you the complete experience. Enjoy.
It was, hilariously to say, the next big thing, and everyone was hyping it up to be the Warhammer GW killer. And it had a flash moment of when it was outselling it, and then when it was at its peak of the powers, it fumbled the ball, shall we say, and...
Matthew here from miniwargaming.com, and in this video we want to show you how to play Warmachine and Hordes. This is just going to be a really basic tutorial.
I'd like to talk to you about my absolute favorite war game, and it's not 40K. It's a game called Hordes.
The game is Warmachine Tactics, and you guys are on the show floor in a big way.
And the gold Ennie for best game goes to Iron Kingdom's Privateer Press.
Anywhere that's comfortable for you to sort of sit here like this.
That's fine. Yeah. Awesome.
So nice and relaxed.
Yeah.
The recording camera, recording sound. I'll just stick this down here.
After a sound check.
I suppose just for the boys and girls at home, if you can just say your name and what factions, armies in Warmachine, Hordes, any of it that you used to collect.
Okay, so hi, I'm Lee McAlpin. I run a YouTube channel called Bleeped Up Productions. Haven't done content for a while, but back in the day I did a ton of Warmachine content. I also worked with Hand Cannon Online, which was it was like a broadcaster of multiple podcasts, which I did for my faction, which is the only faction you should play, which is Kador, which is not Russia, trust me. But I did dabble in Mercs and also Trollbloods. So I dabbled into the Hordes as well as the Warmachine factions, but mainly Kador, Big Red, Stompy Machines was my faction, yes.
My name is David Cook and I play Necrofactorum from the Crix faction. We're currently in Black Dragon Miniatures in Hinckley in the UK, which is right in the middle of the country, pretty much just East Midlands side. So it is a reasonably sized wargaming store where we focus on hobby and gaming space, running tournaments, events, gaming nights. So we have an online store, but our primary business is people coming in and playing games and building a community and developing the community as opposed to just retail.
I'm Aidan. I play Crix and Everblight and other such factions. I've got like random bits of everything because I have no self-control and a credit card.
My name is James Hall. I am the content creator for the JH Miniatures YouTube channel. You might know me from all of my Gaslands related videos from the last 7 to 8 years, as well as all of my work with the Gaslands UK Car of the Month and Car of the Year competitions that ran from 2020 to 2024, so about 5 years. My Warmachine faction was Protectorate of Menoth, and to say I was ever really massively into Warmachine isn't a fair statement, because I wasn't. But I wanted to make this documentary because ultimately Warmachine, Hordes and Privateer Press, they form a significant part of our tabletop wargaming history. It might be hard to imagine now if you're new to this hobby, but there was a time where these guys were the American war game to keep an eye on, right? If you were an odds-on betting person, they were the odds-on favourite. If anyone was going to topple Games Workshop from the wargaming throne, it was going to be these guys. And then fast forward about 25 years, and they're not a shadow of their former selves, right? So the question is, well, how did that happen?
In my opinion, if Privateer Press is serious about making a successful game and gaming community, they've got to play like they've got a pair.
If anyone saw the picture of the Warmachine Privateer Press booth from the Las Vegas Open, that story really will tell it all. Mark IV was out at this point, but like their band, like they didn't have a Mark IV banner. Like the banner they had was like 3 years old. They were still like the first thing on the banner was still Monster Apocalypse. They only had like Mark III stuff for sale, like dead units, like units that were not getting rules in 4th edition. The game was clearly on like a death spiral, and like everyone saw it was on a death spiral.
You can get some really good deals, like deals as in like 5 to 10% of retail. It's pretty it's pretty good for you, pretty bad for sellers. Like there is no resale value for this game. You're pretty much almost getting it for free from people.
This, what I have here in front of me, and I'm going to show you why, is basically the death knell for the company. This is trash. This is garbage. Don't release shit like this. The front cover, completely warped. They're coming apart out of the box. So trash, garbage, right? There's even some like, you can already see weird crimping along the bindings because they're not folding open correctly. Again, you're getting bubbles where the print is separating from the cardboard backing inside of the cover and the back cover. And I can see on every single page, every single one of these pages is about to let go. Every single one of them.
Ailing Warhammer 40k rival Warmachine bought up by competitor.
The big announcement of Warmachine being purchased by Steamforged Games. They've got their work cut out for them. That's putting it mildly.
The Kickstarter launch. So of course, a Kickstarter company are going to milk this as for all it's worth with as many Kickstarters as they can.
All right. Oh, we do have at least a piece of artwork and links to go somewhere to find out more.
But it doesn't say anything about missing dice, missing a ruler, missing basic instructions, missing a rule book, and people will buy this assuming, well, it's a starter set. Of course it comes. It probably doesn't even need to be said that those are included.
What is this? There's literally no instructions here.
It doesn't come with anything you need to play the game. It doesn't come with rules. It doesn't come with a quick start guide, how to, like a quick skirmish game doesn't come with any scenarios. It doesn't, and it's frustrating because like, so what am I paying $100 for?
Whenever a game dies, you have fallout, which is I've always had it with either card games or even miniature games, which we're talking about. With Warmachine, the one thing that attracted to me to it wasn't just like the fact of how cool the minis looked, it was also the lore. So if something sells me on cool minis, the rule of cool effectively is what I liked. The primer, then we've got my faction book, a lore dump where some of my favourite warcasters ever came into Warmachine, Signar because it was free at an event I went to, and Reckoning, which was probably one of my favourite books because it introduced one of my favourite warjacks for the Butcher, his character Jack. But yeah, so where do I begin?
Is it the entirety of everything they ever made for Khador? Or?
No, I don't own everything that Khador runs. I'm missing a few things. My favourite warjack ever was Ruin. This was Butcher's personal jack, and basically you had his Orgoth shield and stuff, but like you just play themed and yeah.
Warmachine is a fast-paced and aggressive 32mm tabletop miniatures battle game for 2 or more players set in the steam-powered fantasy world of the Iron Kingdoms. Each player takes on the role of an elite soldier sorcerer known as a Warcaster. Warcasters act as the commander of an army, and though they are formidable combatants on their own, their true strength lies in their magical ability to control and coordinate mighty warjacks. Each Warmachine combatant is represented on the tabletop by a highly detailed and dramatically posed miniature figurine referred to as a model. Players collect, assemble, and paint these models to represent the varied men, machines, and creatures in their army.
So let's have a bit of a history lesson, right? Let's get everyone up to speed. If you've never heard of Warmachine or Privateer Press, let's just, right, day one, who were they? Why should we care, right? So Privateer Press as a company was established in the year 2000 in America by Matt Wilson, Brian Snoddy, and Matt Starosik. And originally the company was founded to release Dungeons & Dragons modules for D&D 3.5 under the Open Game license. Matt Wilson and Brian Snoddy had cut their teeth in the creative industry at Wizards of the Coast. They were Magic the Gathering card artists and concept artists, and they wanted to take that creativity and control it and be able to make their own universe, their own game, make their own money at the end of the day, right? Matt Starosik would make the cover art for the first modules they made. He's a bit of a ghost online, but he made the cover art for the Witchfire trilogy and the Iron Kingdom setting that they would create as a company, and then he vanishes from the picture. So this documentary isn't going to talk about him. But the speed with which Privateer Press would go from formation to creating these modules and creating this universe and all the concept art for it and all the factions and lore and history to then releasing a war game in 2003 is pretty incredible. Now, don't get me wrong, Matt Wilson and Brian Snoddy did not know how to make miniatures. That was not their forte. So they needed someone to help them. And very early on, they were joined by Mike McVeigh. Mike McVeigh of Games Workshop Warhammer fame, right?
But while I was working at Wizards of the Coast as an art director, I met some guys there, and they were running at that point a very small company called Privateer Press. And I jumped on board with those guys as a partner, and we created Warmachine. And I left Privateer Press to come back to the UK in 2007 and set my own company, Studio McVeigh.
But what Mike McVeigh brought to the table was all the knowledge and experience of being able to design miniatures and take that 2D image and turn it into a 3D model and actually craft miniatures and commission sculpts and get those master sculpts turned into molds and then turn those molds into products that could be boxed and sold. All of a sudden, 2003 Warmachine Prime, Warmachine First Edition is launched.
Hey guys, how's it going? Mike Martin's here, Mike Martin's channel. I just want to do a quick video on Warmachine versus Warhammer. I've played both games, and I'm going to tell you right now, Warmachine is far more superior. Warmachine is a condensed game where it is Warcaster, and that's like your king in chess and your army. Warcaster dies, game's over. Caster kill. But this guy gives focus to these guys within a command check range to allow them to make their special abilities. Without the focus from him, they can't make special abilities, but do basic stuff.
So you have to rewind the clock. You have to remember that we're talking about a very different time here. The wargaming tabletop geek landscape as it was in 2003 is very different to what we know now. And the aesthetics that were popular then, big high fantasy concept, beautiful women, cool giant robots, that kind of ultra fantasy that became really popular in the early 2000s, in the MMO era of geek culture, if you like.
All right, Philip, when did you start playing Warmachine and Hordes?
I picked up the game about 6 months ago because I walked into the local store that I play at, and there was a demo going on. The owner asked me to play in it instead of having him playing it so I could just sit back and talk, and I got hooked.
I started playing in 2003 when the game was released. Basically, me and some friends walked into our LGS, and, to get some Warhammer stuff or something, I don't remember what, but saw the models, and they were just gorgeous figures, and talked to the store manager a little bit about how you just needed that box to play, and we decided we'd all pick a faction up, so there were 4 of us, and we all got a starter box, and I picked up the rule book, and I've just been hooked ever since.
Well, I started dating Rich, and he was playing, and it looked pretty awesome, so picked up a battle box. Went from there.
How'd you pick your faction?
Well, I started off the game with Signar because that's what I had experience with doing the demos, and I really enjoyed them. I've liked the shooting aspect of them. And then when I got into Scorn, well, they don't have a lot of shooting, so it was really a big change for me because I wanted a melee army, but I didn't want another Warmachine army at the time. And I really like the Asian feel with all the back banners and stuff like that. So that's why I have both Signar and Scorn.
Well, the first battle box I bought was Crix. You could just say I've played them on and off the entire time. I've went my way through all the factions, but Crix just because I love the models, love the playstyle. Legion, my main Hordes faction, was I've always wanted to play them, but we always had a friend in the gaming group that's been playing them. So as soon as they kind of dropped down, I started playing those. And I've been playing them for a couple of years now, and had a lot of success with them. They're just a really fun army, and once again, I love the models.
I mean, who wouldn't want to play werewolves? You know, I love the models. They're so cool. So, all of them, pretty much.
The game would take off at an astounding pace. And although Privateer Press would never have the kind of in-house manufacturing that Games Workshop had or other companies had, they kind of didn't need it. They would have metal manufacturing at home, certainly, and some cast plastic stuff, but they didn't have the brick and mortar store presence that companies like Games Workshop did. Games Workshop has always been very unique in that aspect. Being a UK-based company in the 80s, brick and mortar stores were the way to go, right? So that infrastructure was already in place for them. Privateer Press, as a brand new company in America, didn't have that luxury. And with the scale and landmass of America, you can't exactly expect them to start opening up a shop in every single town and city across all the 50 states. It just isn't going to happen. With retail costs and expenses of staff and you name it, if you're a brand new company, you do all of your trading through distributors and local games clubs. And Privateer Press had that system nailed down day one. And then in 2005, you would have Games Workshop cancelling the Outrider program. So you'd then have all of these volunteers, these people that could run game demos, that could run your tournaments, that could run events and spread the name in the different hobby shops, in the different communities across the 50 states. Now, part of the mythos that we fall into when we talk about these game companies is we like to imagine it as a David versus Goliath, right? It's the little plucky American war game company versus the big dog Games Workshop. And it's them versus the world, and they're going to do it. They're going to strike out there and make their game and make their millions, and they're going to come out on top, right? They were just one of many war games in the landscape at that point. You had other miniature manufacturers producing models all over the world, in Europe and France and you name it. They were not the only ones doing this. What they brought to the table that was unique was the fact that their setting was already very well established, had a player base ready to go right out of the box because they had all these D&D players they could convert over to it.
Players of the Witchfire trilogy might remember that the Cult of Cirrus played a very active role in terms of that story, and so there was a harkening back to the past.
But it was a matter of having a compelling reason for this faction to become a player in the battles of Western Imran in Warmachine.
My name is Doug Seacat, lead writer at Privateer Press, and you're in a seminar about the history of Imran in particular, but Kane in a general sense, the history of our world. I'm kind of going to be starting at the dawn of time and going as far as I can until I run out of time. Some of the cosmology that's behind it, since that's an area that I think especially a lot of our Warmachine and Hordes fans don't necessarily know, as well as the histories of their individual factions.
And the game itself was really cheap and easy to get into.
I mean, we got into it because it was a matter of we were both broke and unemployed. And the Warmachine starter box was cheaper than the GW Mini of the month.
The price to entry with Warmachine, the barrier to entry, was almost like non-existent, right? Because all you needed to play was something like this, right? A battle group starter box.
It's got all the miniatures you need, all the rules you need, and an in-depth faction guide telling you more about miniatures you can collect to continue building your forces.
And those battle boxes are probably one of the coolest things to ever get people into games, because you can literally play that out of the box and you didn't need to buy this or buy that and whatever. You could literally just buy that and you're done.
Now, Warmachine was the first game. In 2006, you would see the release of Hordes as a game. And that was the more, if Warmachine is like the steampunk fantasy, Hordes was like the primal bestial fantasy, like with the werewolves and the giant trolls and ogres and rock monsters and all that kind of stuff. What made Warmachine and Hordes so unique as a game system is both systems could be played independently, but they could also be played together. A Warmachine army could very easily fight a Hordes army. There might be some minor differences, but the fundamentals were the same. You killed the Warlock of a Hordes army, it's exactly the same as killing a Warcaster in a Warmachine army. No other game at the time did this, right? To release two products that were completely interchangeable. They had a wonderful advantage over their competition immediately, because they were an American company making an American wargame for American aesthetics and sensibilities in a market that was crying out for something like that, right?
The game filled a role in wargaming that I think wasn't filled up until that point. A balanced game with synergy and a real competitive nature where people who practice and get better at the game and understand the rules better can succeed and get a fix from that. It filled that sort of role and created a really good competitive game. And then I think some of the people that were looking for that from other manufacturers that didn't get it kind of flooded to it to a degree. And it really did put its own identity on.
What do we need to do with the trophy?
We're going to put our names in big emblazoned letters on it and bring it back here next year and try to take it back with us again.
So they expand, and they expand quickly. And with expansion comes the desire for more products in the catalogue and more growth and just more stuff for people to enjoy. Very quickly they released their own monthly magazine, they released their own paint line, they released a painting tutorial how-to video series that's incredibly retro when you look at it now, but it's a product of its time. But that was also something that no one else was doing at the time. If you wanted painting advice, you had to look in magazines. This is before YouTube takes off, right? The abundance of painting guides and tutorials just didn't exist back then. It was all magazine based, right? Unless you went to a trade show and spoke to someone. Privateer Press would host their own events. Yeah, it was all well and good that Warhammer would attend things like Gen Con or whatever. Privateer Press went, you know what, we're going to have our own competitions. They were going to hold them at SmogCon and Lock and Load Fest, and they were going to have their own competitive scene.
And I'm here with Simon from Privateer Press. Has it moved things forward in the gameplay for people at tournaments and things like that? Do you see like an uptick in that kind of thing?
Oh yeah, Mark II has just been enormous for us. We've more than doubled our production staff in the last 4 months to meet demand. And the participation we're getting at events and tournaments and stuff, it's unbelievable. We are very happy right now.
And multiple levels of competitive scene. It wasn't just a case of you show up for a game and you're just stuck playing the same amateurs. They took a lot of inspiration, I think, from Wizards of the Coast's own Magic sort of Grand Prix system at the time. If you won enough local games, you would get invited to a regional game.
In 2013, for our casual tier, players can expect to see an update for the Journeyman rules. It's going to give them even more options than before.
We're going to have book release events with the special one-day scenarios where people just come in and play. We're going to have Iron Arena. We're making that bigger and better with new prizes, new gameplay experiences.
And then our league this year, Machinations, is going to be awesome.
Unlike leagues previously, Machinations actually has an overall year storyline that players are going to be a part of, and they're going to be able to discover and uncover very special and hidden spoilers.
Which would allow you to get qualified enough to take part in a global game, Worlds.
The very first qualifier is going to be at Lock and Load 2013, with the first final being held at Lock and Load 2014. In between there, we're going to have several global qualifiers. If you place high enough, you're going to earn points that'll get you a spot in the finals in 2014, where you'll take your shot at earning the title Best in the World.
All these positive factors leading to this period of growth where it feels like they can do no wrong. So they start releasing other games as well. They release Monster Apocalypse, they release Level 7 Escape. If you look at kind of the list of all the things that Privateer Press does at this point, it's massive. It's absolutely insane the amount of expansion they do over the course of like 10 years. Privateer Press as a company had Warmachine, Hordes, those were the main games. They had Grind as a board game that released in 2009. They had High Command, the living card game, the deck building card game. They had Iron Kingdoms, which was their role-playing setting. They had the video game Wargame Tactics that came out, as well as a game before that that was originally worked on by the studio, but would eventually become Warmachine Tactics. But there was footage that was very clearly not what became Warmachine Tactics. You would have a string of little Munchkin-like party games that they would produce. You had Monsterpocalypse as a board game and Level 7, which were just completely different from Warmachine and Hordes. From the success of Monsterpocalypse and its IP tie-ins, you would then have whispers of a Monsterpocalypse film being produced that was going to come out, that was being directed by Tim Burton, and then Guillermo del Toro, and then that falls through. You had the animations, you had the cosplay, you had the statue making and the art competition and the game and the tournaments. They had collectible pin badges, they had apparel, t-shirts and lanyards, you had trophies you could win, you had certificates. They had funded at one point the charity auction for the Rock Band video game to have a Warmachine song performed and put in the game, and that money was then donated to charity. They didn't have to do that, but it was all about that perception of power and wealth and being established on the wargaming tabletop scene, and that we are here and we are a contender and we are the American answer to this problem, right? And if anyone's going to take Games Workshop off of that #1 podium, it's going to be us. It's not going to be anyone else. It's going to be us that does it. And that's kind of when I think things start to fall apart, because the reality is the horror story that we are watching, that I'm telling you, is that even with all this growth and success and everything being a straight trajectory upwards, there start to come the problems. And ultimately it is a slow decline to the shadow that the company would then become. Because always remember, in 2024, Privateer Press would sell the IP, the intellectual rights to the Iron Kingdom, to Warmachine, Hordes, the paint range, the magazine, all of it. They would sell all of it to Steamforged Games for a few more months and years of existence. The question is, how did we get to that point?
Well, I'm Aidan Jennings for Channel Big News. This is a regular sized mic. I'm just very tall.
Woolwich Denagra with armour of 14. My flamethrower is power 12, so I need to get at least 18 to kill her outright. Oh, would you look at those dice? 6, 6, 6. Gone. One-shotted, assassinated your bullshit with my warjack. Best day ever. All those metal models, all that cheesy bullshit for nothing. Yes.
Okay, Donald, we have 11 minutes. Talk what you like about the miniatures. The models don't glue together. They don't even fit together. You can't see it now because of the glue, and I had to use so much glue. But if I'd managed to try and glue it together with a thin amount of glue, you could have seen right through them, literally to the other side. I know, I've seen it.